Do you wonder about past lives? Have you ever thought about where your soul has been, where it's going, or what lessons and memories have been gathered along the way? In this podcast, we will discuss past life memories, psychic phenomena, energy healing, and other metaphysical topics with experts and the average person to find out how we can heal through these experiences. So I invite you to join me on my journey. Welcome to the Regression Session. Oh man, there's some weird spirit screwing around with my insides. Welcome back to the Regression Session. My name is Ian. Welcome to the Regression Session. To any new listeners, thanks for tuning in. We love you. This week, we are going to be hearing from my boy, Chad Andrews. And he is the creator of the Ascension Chamber. And he wouldn't take credit, but I'm going to give him some credit and some props for building this crazy blend of science and spirituality. If you haven't heard of the Ascension Chamber, they have a documentary on YouTube and stuff that I will link in the description so you can check it out. But the SparkNotes version is Chad kind of had a spiritual awakening. He received the blueprints and sections for this chamber that's designed for healing. It's designed for healing your body and your spirit and combining those two things. And it's using what's unfortunately considered fringe science in the mainstream, but has a lot of basis in actual science. It uses science from Nikola Tesla and other pioneers in the scientific field. So I'm really excited to share this episode with you guys because Chad is basically a genius and he's really fun to talk to. If you haven't already, definitely subscribe to the podcast in your podcast player so you don't miss any of my weekly uploads. I upload every Sunday morning at 8 o'clock a.m. Mountain Standard Time, because that's just how it is. Also, don't forget to share the podcast with everybody that you know in the world so that we can grow this community. If you want to come onto the podcast to talk with me about your past life experiences or your knowledge on any metaphysical topic, shoot me an email. My email is theregressionsession@gmail.com, and I would love to hear from you. I really would. I'll respond to all of you guys. Check out my Facebook page, my Facebook group, Instagram, all that good stuff. Links in the description. Check them out. And here is my conversation with Chad. Chad, thanks for coming on to the show. And I would like for you, if you're willing to, just kind of tell me a little bit of background about you and your beliefs, maybe like how you were raised and then kind of how you morphed into where you are today. And then we can kind of shift into talking about what I really would like to talk about is your amazing Ascension Chamber.
Well, thanks, my brother. I'm excited to talk to you as well. And thank you for the opportunity to share and raise awareness about the Ascension Chamber and the good work that we're attempting to do with that. It's meaningful. We need as much awareness brought about for the technology that we're working with as possible. So thank you for that. And yeah, gee whiz, if you wanted to know a little bit about my upbringing, I was one of three children, and we went to Sunday school, and we were raised in a non-denominational Christian family. And I had faith all the way up even through high school. I was volunteering to go to Christian seminary as an A hour prior to high school class. So I definitely believed, although I didn't necessarily have any strong evidence. I certainly believed the stories, and I felt like it was true and correct. And then somewhere probably between the high school years and into your 30s, it's real easy to start questioning that belief system, and you meet so many fabulous people that I was taught we're going to go to hell. That it was quite conflicting for me to actually believe that that's the way it would work. And I just really started to doubt the honesty and truthfulness of the Bible scripture, where it was displaying this God that was just so ornery and hateful in the Old Testament, and wanting blood sacrifices, and those things didn't really line up with my heart. And I think I just basically decided that it was probably all nonsense because there was just too many religions, and so I really dropped out of believing uh, in putting too much stock in religion. I wasn't going to church on a regular basis, and I was okay with church and wanted my son to go to Christian school and things of that nature, because I felt like I strongly agree with the philosophy of that Christ taught. But it wasn't important to me in my own life, to whether it was true or not. I just supported it for those other reasons. Um, and eventually, it got to a point where I came across some stories about the kids with past life memories, and I found that kind of inexplicable. And as I dug deeper into it, and I discovered Dr. Ian Stevenson's work through the University of Virginia, and all of the cases that he investigated, and had only been able to conclude that reincarnation was truly the only explanation that was available. And I studied some of his work, and I was absolutely convinced that this was a demonstration, or very demonstrative of the fact that our souls must have more than one incarnation. And so I chased that hole for a little bit, and did the past life regressions, and was very surprised to have seen some past lives, which included myself being a monk. And it was an emotional experience, and it was my eyes were fluttering as if I was in like some kind of deep REM. They were fluttering quicker than I could do it at all on my own ever. And it was quite an amazing experience. And eventually that led to meditation, hearing about and experimenting with some of the different plant medicines, really exploring consciousness. And that led me to the Monroe Institute. And I had some extraordinary experiences there. Of course, they're in Virginia, and you can go to their, it's kind of like a consciousness camp for a week, where you use their sound technology that they've pioneered in order to really reach very deep places of meditation. And when I went to the Monroe Institute, I had an explosive, life changing experience where I was able to cross over and meet my grandfather. And I had never met my grandfather in my life, because he had committed suicide prior to my birth.
And that was just recently, right?
Then
Like,
I went,
yeah,
that was
at this last like week, right? Did that happen this last week that you went?
no, this was like 6 or 7 years ago when I first went to the institute, and I took their gateway program, and it was life changing for me. I mean, I literally was my consciousness was brought to a higher plane. That's the only way I can explain it. And I was able to meet with and walk with my grandfather and ask him questions and discuss World War II with him. And it was a mind-bending experience, to say the least. And I became a big fan of what they do at the Monroe Institute, and their amazing technology to assist somebody that's not an experienced meditator reach these places that you might expect would take 10 or 15 years to get to. And Monroe Institute, they worked really hard to pioneer that technology, and it's a fabulous a starting point for anybody on a spiritual journey, kind of a Disneyland for exploring consciousness. And after that, I had I was meditating on a regular basis, and the I was getting messages, and it was about opening up healing centers, and I was having some remarkable experiences in my life spiritually, and I was witnessing the most amazing supernatural type of occurrences um, that were really inexplicable, and I was so joyful. And as spirit began to communicate with me, I was being told that it was okay for me to leave my career, and that everything was in place, and that I had this mission, if you will, that I had incarnated for, which included opening up healing centers. And I had no idea about any such thought of opening up healing centers, but the level of miracles that I was exposed to were um, so overwhelming, and I volunteered happily to to do whatever it took to follow guidance. And I volunteered. I just said, I want to be of service. And the guidance I was given was to sell my home and give away my material possessions. And I would began to do a lot of traveling, and I was able to travel quite extensively around the world. I went to a lot of uh, sacred spots, if you will, and went to a lot of different healing centers, and did a lot of fasting, and did a lot of spiritual work. And that lasted for a couple of years, and it took me to Brazil, to Peru, it took me to Iceland, it took me to Thailand, to the Philippines. It took me to Bali. I studied shamanism. Spirit was really immersing me very quickly and heavily into I guess tearing down my old belief systems, and opening my awareness to you know things that I had never even thought about asking. And I just continued to be a good student, believing that I was in touch with my guidance, and believing that I was, having communication with what we might term angels. And I wanted to see where it would lead. And eventually, after a extensive amount of traveling and exploring consciousness, um, I was able to begin a communication with some intelligence that was suggesting that I build this, Ascension Chamber is what we call it. And I really felt obligated to pursue it, because in my communication, my guidance was suggesting that, it would benefit humanity immensely, and people would be able to overcome, some terrible conditions if they were to, use this technology that I was being asked to assemble. And I was, intrigued by that, skeptical, but I felt, that if this is what I was supposed to do, then I really had an obligation to build it. And I was getting downloads and instructions on a few steps at a time, so I never was given the full blueprint up front. And it wasn't until I would finish performing the tasks that I would be able to meditate and get the next few steps. So for about a year and a half, the steps continued to come in, and we were able to build what's called the Ascension Chamber. And it is we call it an energetic or energy enhanced meditation, we commonly call it. And it's a unique geodesic dome positioned underneath a pyramid, and inside the geodesic dome there's a tremendous amount of Tesla technology involved. The chairs, they like a zero gravity chair, and it reclines, and it's all the heavy backing was removed, and Spirit instructed us to fill the thing from top to bottom with raw colored tourmaline crystals with magnetic sand. And so essentially, when you're in the zero gravity position inside the chamber, you're literally laying on a bed of crystals. And then surrounding the chair, we've got some multi-wave oscillators, and um, these are large concentric rings that are strung together using silk thread. And it was actually an invention from the 1930s by a colleague of Nikola Tesla. And yes, Tesla had his hand in this creation. And Lakhovsky had this theory that he put in this book in the 1930s called The Secret of Life, where he essentially concluded that every cell and every tissue, every organ in the body is operating at its own frequency. And he theorized that this device that he created, when excited by the Tesla coils, that these concentric rings would actually produce a field of energy and a set of frequencies that matched the cell's frequencies of the human body. And so he believed that if you were to sit between these rings, that the flooding in of the body of matching frequencies would result in the what is the name of the term when you have matching frequencies in it? Um, Sympathetic resonance. That's the term I'm looking for. So he believed that by matching the cells of the human body, sympathetic resonance would occur, and that's when you've seen it probably demonstrated where if you have two tuning forks and they're tuned to the same frequency, if you bang on one, that frequency is oscillates over to the other uh, matching frequency.
Right. It's all about like vibration and stuff, right?
Right.
And those
Yeah.
multi-wave oscillators, just for my audience, that's light frequency, right? Or am I confused?
It is not light frequency. It's strictly just electromagnetic
Okay,
frequencies.
gotcha.
Yeah. Now
Okay,
what's
EMF.
That's correct. And the I don't have the frequencies memorized, the range. So, but they're easy to find. But this was the range of frequencies that he believed were capable of, basically re-energizing the cell. And if he believed that if they were exposed to their same frequency, that the amplitude of the cell would be increased. And he believed that at high amplitude that the cell was quite capable of resisting, disease and pathogens. But he recognized that, hey, as we get older, the cells and the immune system, they aren't, quite kicking as hard as they once were. So he believed that if somebody were to subject themselves, on a regular basis to these frequencies, that these cells would be vibrating at their, high amplitude, and the body would reach, basically restore itself. And surprisingly, the uh, the amount of documentation is overwhelming that it was curing a tremendous number of individuals over in Europe. And this was in the 1930s. And there's a tremendous number of case studies with pictures before and after, describing which doctor, multiple hospitals were involved, multiple physicians, and the case studies are really quite compelling. Now, legend has it that the equipment and everything, once Lakhovsky passed away under disputed conditions, that all of his work was, basically pulled from the participating hospitals and buried from the public's view. So I believe that the story goes that about 15 years ago, they found an original Lakhovsky unit in the basement of a hospital, and they were able to back engineer it. And there's a company out of Norway that is producing the replica of the result of back engineering this original unit that was found. And so when you're in the Ascension Chamber, you're lying on this bed of crystals, and you're also lying between these, concentric rings that are being excited by the Tesla coils, producing this, beautiful field of frequencies that just somehow relaxes the body amazingly, puts you in a very, very deep, relaxed state. And then surrounding that, there's about 5 additional Tesla coils with the carousels of noble gases. And when the Tesla coils are activated, then that excites all of the noble gases, producing the plasma field. So you're basically being bathed in this plasma energy while you're also, experiencing the oscillations from the multi-wave oscillator.
So
And
what's for my audience, like what's the noble gases?
well, the noble gases are going to include like argon, xenon, helium, Um, these gases are uh, considered noble because of their qualities. And because I'm not a scientist, you'd have to look that one up or refer to your listeners. Again, one of the challenges for me in this whole process is, that I'm not a sound engineer, and yet, we've created this amazing sound bath. I'm not an electrical engineer, and yet I'm being given all these instructions that involve all these interesting technologies that I really have no expertise in whatsoever. I'm just kind of like the I feel like the volunteer on the ground, bringing in the information. Um,
So real quick, sorry to interrupt you. So all this stuff, like all this seemingly random, all these seemingly random components, all these different parts and pieces, all the electrical engineering and stuff, that all just kind of came to you then?
yes, exactly. In meditation, I would be directed um, to the positioning of the equipment, the technology, the number of pieces, the types of crystals to be used, the shape and size of the chamber, all of these things were passed along to me, and so they were coming through me, not from me, and I understood that, and I understood it that my role in this was, to bring it through into creation, but it was a gift for humanity to be shared. It wasn't, you know, it wasn't coming from me in any egotistical way. I understood fully that, that it was just coming through me, and I was just, the messenger, really. And I feel like I was blessed with the resources to try to chase the rabbit hole and build this quote unquote ascension chamber. And I agreed to do it. But forgive me, and your listeners, please forgive me if I come across quite ignorant when it comes to, the science and the, how everything works together, because I really only have a cursory understanding. Certainly nothing anywhere close to a PhD level of any of the topics that we're involved with.
And that's interesting to me too, because you have this basically like mathematically constructed chamber with all these different components that you didn't even know about beforehand. You were just like, if we were watching you on like a, what do you call, like a time lapse, we'd be like, what in the hell is this guy doing? Like all these different things, and then all of a sudden you have this super cool, like mathematically sound, structurally sound chamber. So what was that like? What was it like building it? Like what was going through your head on like a personal level when you're like, what's going on? Did you ever like question yourself? You're like, am I going crazy?
No, I never questioned myself about whether I was going crazy. Um, Now, there's a side story to all of that, but I think that I was most excited because I was really curious. What am I building? And I was curious to see, like, does it work? What's it going to do? I have no idea. So I was definitely excited in the beginning to build it. Um, and get it done because I wanted to test it. I wanted to, find out what it was capable of doing. And there was a lot of enthusiasm with that in the beginning. And I didn't know how big it was going to grow. So originally, when I was being told to build this geodesic dome, I built it, and it actually fit inside a garage. Of course, that wasn't going over very well with the homeowners association, and so it had to be moved after just a few months of constructing the chamber, which I was okay with because I knew if it works, it's going to have to be somewhere other than a garage anyway. So I rented a very cheap a warehouse space with really high ceilings, and you know suddenly spirits having us put it build a granite platform, and use sacred geometry all over the place, and the chamber goes up on top of it, the pyramids above it, and it obviously would have never fit in the garage, and it was quite the experience to go through to watch it grow from what I thought was going to be a fairly simple chamber to this much more well thought out, luxurious type of creation where you step back and you go, wow, like I'm pretty impressed with the intelligence that went into the design, and I hats off to them. Again, I don't take credit for it. I just feel like I was a good listener, or had done whatever work was necessary spiritually to open up my channel to receive information. That's as far as I can say that I really have gone on this project. I really don't want anybody to think that I'm trying to take credit for it, because I'm not. But we we kind of had a team, come together of different individuals that have brought some, fantastic talents, and a lot of the times they will, in their own meditation, come up with something, and guidance was in total agreement with it. So, a lot of the instructions were coming through the community, if you will, and it brought quite a few of us together that have been here from the very beginning, and we got the chamber up and running, and got the sound system installed using a lot of the sound technology that you might be familiar with that Monroe Institute pioneered back in the day. The former sound engineer Mark Serto created all of the interior music. There's 12 speakers, so it's all directional toward the body, using kind of esoteric beats and patterns that are described as being able to, assist energy moving through the body and break up energy blocks, etc. And so you step back and you're like, I mean, this really is throwing a lot of information at the body at once to try to bring it back into balance. I mean, you're nailing it with, the 12 different spectrochrome colors that Dinshaw used back in the 30s and 40s when he was stressing the importance of light frequencies and how beneficial they could be. You're getting a sound bath, you're getting the, a plasma bath. And very curious when you end up looking into plasma and what the benefit might be of a plasma bath. If you Google plasma bath, crop seeds, plasma, plant seeds, you'll see all these studies just in the last few years where these seeds are actually, if they're exposed to the noble gases, excited by high voltage to create the plasma filled, these seeds are somehow growing into bigger, faster, stronger plants with higher crop production. They're disease resistant, and science doesn't have an explanation for why it's happening. They just all of these studies recognize that these observations are being made, that there's something about this plasma energy that seems to be unlocking some hidden potential within plant and crop seeds. And so when you're in the Ascension Chamber, Spirit had us set it up where you're bathed with 5 different coils, creating this amazing plasma energy. And people set their intentions, and they go in for this 40-minute experience, and they're listening to headphones that have binaural beats and frequencies coming through. They get super relaxed. We've encouraged them to invite their angels and their higher self, God, whatever it is that they resonate with within their own heart. We ask them to give permission, and people will come out of that chamber and they'll swear that they felt the hand of an angel holding their hand. They'll claim that they've met with Jesus. They've seen Jesus. It's quite remarkable the amount of stories that we get spiritually from individuals that have gone in the chamber is quite, it raises some eyebrows. You're like, really? Like, that's really interesting because, there's a lot going on within that chamber, and yet people oftentimes will go in there and they step out with these amazing experiences. And they have a lot of emotional releases in there, and people get back to us and tell us that they've had health conditions completely disappear. They've had the things that they were trying to manifest and pray for in the chamber, they've had come to pass real quick, whether it's love or financial or employment related. And we hear these stories quite often, and it makes you step back and go, what is it about the Ascension Chamber that is making this happen? And
so real quick before we go on,
Sure.
Sorry to interrupt you again. So let me just try to break this down just for my audience, because there's a lot to bite, there's a lot to chew on. Hey everyone, I'm interrupting the episode to tell you all about my Patreon campaign. I love doing this podcast, and it is amazing to hear from people telling me how much they love it too. It takes a ton of time and effort to keep producing content every single week for you guys, and I would love to put out even more for everyone to enjoy. By subscribing to a tier in my Patreon campaign, you can help support the show, provide more episodes, bonus episodes, behind the scenes content, and just extra content in general. So if you enjoy the show and you feel it's worth your time listening and would like to contribute, you can go to patreon.com/The Regression Session. There's also a link in the description. Thanks so much for the support. I could never do this show without each and every one of you. Now back to the episode. You talked about all kinds of stuff in this chamber, right? We talk about your cells. We talked about sound waves. We talked about light. We talked about plasma, right? So I just want to break this down a little bit, and feel free to correct me if I have a misunderstanding. So with this chamber, you're trying to blend science and spirituality, which people have been trying to do for a long, long time, right? And it's interesting that you've kind of taken these pioneers like Nikola Tesla, and I forget the other gentleman's name, but you took his sound technology and put it together. So let me just break it down for my audience. When we talk about light, okay, just for any, because I do have some skeptics that listen to this show, and if you're unfamiliar with this kind of stuff, it's really good to have like a baseline to be like, oh yeah, that makes a lot of sense, right? So when you're talking about light healing, someone who's never heard of that would be like, Chad, you're nuts, right? They'd be like, you're crazy, man. But think about, for anybody out there that doesn't know about light healing, think about this. What's the cure for jaundice? Like if you have a newborn baby and they have jaundice, which is where their skin is yellow and their liver isn't functioning correctly, what's the treatment? Sunlight. You put them in the sunlight, right? Now, like, your common sense will tell you there's no reason that that would work, but you get vitamin D from the sun, and it helps your liver to function better when you have jaundice. So that's proof right there that light can affect your body in different ways, right?
Well, even beyond that, in the hospital, when infants have jaundice, they'll put them in an incubator and they use a specific blue light. It's the only way to rectify the situation and keep the baby alive. So even the medical field in modern day recognizes that, light obviously carries information that the body responds to. And there was a gentleman back in the 30s named Dinshaw that, had devised an entire system using light frequencies, and that he called them the spectrochrome colors.
Yeah, and that's very interesting. So light does affect your body, and you have that in the chamber. And so you're not just randomly throwing stuff in there, right? You're putting things that have been proven to be effective. And another one of those things is sound. So for anybody who doesn't know this, and I'll try to include as many links as I can in the description for anybody wondering about this stuff. But sound also has a huge effect on your body. The military has actually weaponized sound. I'm pretty sure like most of the major militaries on the planet have even weaponized sounds. Like sound, with enough force can kill you. You know what
Absolutely.
I mean? Like at the right frequency, sound can kill you. So if it can kill you, why wouldn't sound vibrations be able to help you in the opposite direction? You brought up the healing of your cells. One thing that's really, really interesting that I've recently, and by recently I mean the last maybe 6 months or so, that I've actually been incorporating something similar into hypnosis. You can actually use this technique to remove anxiety from your body after going through whatever hypnosis treatment you want to do. You actually can ask your cells on an individual level or a microscopic level to change the makeup of your body. And it sounds crazy. Like your conventional mind will tell you, this sounds nuts. But what's really interesting is a lot of the time is like if I did a hypnosis with you, Chad, to heal your anxiety, and I was like, okay, let's now ask your cells on an individual atomic microscopic level to try to change the makeup of your body so that you don't have to feel that anxiety anymore, so that you won't feel it and it's just gone. What's really interesting is a lot of the time people will feel like physical sensations. I had one lady that felt like a a knot like go up her chest and out into her throat and then like out her mouth, and she had like cotton mouth, and she was like, "Oh, this is weird. Is this normal?" And so your cells, like they operate on like an individual level, and it like our hive mind of the religion of science will tell us like, no, that's not right. Like your cells just aren't conscious, but actually they are, and they respond to stimulus, and you can actually talk to them, and it sounds crazy, but you can do it. So all this stuff that you've been talking about, I can kind of back it up with just like common sense stuff if you really think about it. And there's incredible research and science, but like even on a surface level, you can start to look at this stuff and see like, yeah, actually that makes a lot of sense that would have an effect on your body. So I kind of wanted to just kind of break that down a little bit, if that makes sense, and put my own take on it. Sorry to kind of
Absolutely. Well,
hijack you.
no, intent and monks have demonstrated this over and again, where they can control their heart rate, they can control their brain waves, they can control their body temperature. There's studies where the monks have sat out in 40 degrees below zero, and they're able to maintain their body temperature. There is absolute ability to communicate between mind and cell at the cellular level. And the experience that your client described with that ball of energy that was moving up through her system, I oftentimes laugh at how spirit will utilize such amazing and mysterious theatrics to really give you that confirmation that something in fact is actually happening. And I know that for me, it's my belief that the higher self and your subconscious mind is making those types of physical reactions, so that it's a way of really giving you that validation that in fact there's something to it. This is actually real.
Yeah, it is interesting. And like the first time it happens, like when you see it happen one time, it's a fluke. But when you see it happen over and over and over and over again, then you start to realize like, hey, you know what, there's something to this. And I
Absolutely.
just think it's super cool what you're trying to do, blending science and spirituality. So what kind of experiences have you personally had in your chamber?
I have had some incredible connections with guidance inside the chamber. I've had experiences where the body is, I'm just laying there very calm and peaceful, and the body starts to, really shake. And, you feel those kinds of things that you just described, where you feel things, kind of like bubbling up and leaving the body, being cleared out. I've had emotional breakthroughs in there where you're in a great meditative space, and all of a sudden there's this burst of emotion that somehow comes up, and these tears are just flowing, and you're not understanding, like you're almost a witness to the body going through this experience, because you're not necessarily feeling that emotion, but the body is like shedding something. And so that's a real curiosity to me. um, I have not had the experience of Jesus coming in and meeting with me, and I've invited him in always, right? Um, a lot of people that come into the chamber, they'll say that Jesus came in and visited them, and I haven't had that experience myself. I'm open to it, but I've had an extreme range of experiences, ranging from falling asleep to, like I said, incredible, connection to guidance and getting some real nice downloads.
That's fascinating. That you haven't seen Jesus. I'm glad that you said that. That you haven't seen it, because if you always have successes, then something's fishy. You know what I'm saying?
Yeah, well, it leaves me a little jealous actually, but because my greatest spiritual experiences have occurred when I'm alone, and when um, outside of the chamber. Especially early on when I was really being convinced, that I had this mission to pursue. And so I'm a little jealous because I don't get those Marvel comic moments, the way I did. And I really had hoped that the chamber would provide, those types of experiences on a regular basis for me. But, for whatever reason, yeah, for me, it's not you know, home run, spiritual experience every time in there for me. So I'm a little jealous when people come out and they're in tears and they just met loved ones and you know uh, those kinds of things. I'm happy for them, but I'm like, dang, I want to go in there and have that.
So let me ask you maybe a difficult question. Is that okay?
Well, sure. Is there
Okay.
any other kind?
Well, I kind of like to play devil's advocate sometimes, just to kind
All
of poke
right,
at people.
let's do it.
So the goal, like if you strip everything away, the goal of the Ascension Chamber is to put people in an altered state of consciousness, right? Would you say that that's an accurate statement?
We have found that more as a surprise. I think that the original goal, at least my guidance wanted me to believe, that individuals would be able to see end of a lot of suffering by using the chamber.
Okay,
And I'm
but
I'm careful with my words because I don't want to, this is not a medical device, right? So,
right.
but the allure to it originally, at least in my mind, was the potential for it to, greatly combat difficulties, disease, or emotional issues, or whatever it might be able to do to allow people to make great recoveries.
Right. I mean, for like legality reasons, you could just technically say it's an experiment. You know what I mean?
Yeah,
It's an experiment.
we call it a prayer chamber or meditation chamber.
Right. And would you say that like people enter altered states of consciousness frequently when they're in there?
Very frequently.
Okay. So the hard question that I'm going to ask you is what makes you think that these people that go in there and have these experiences aren't just hallucinating or um basically priming themselves to have these experiences, and then they come out and they've basically forced themselves to have these experiences because they're so hyped up about it. So I guess my question is, what makes you think that the experiences are legitimate versus not?
Because I know how crafty spirit is, and spirit is able to um, demonstrate itself in perfect settings. And if it's somebody's intent that they're going to have an experience like that, I think spirit works with them. Um, is every person that goes into the chamber believable? You know, for me, if they describe experiences that are life changing and there's tears flowing down their face, like I'm just, my heart's open to them and I believe it. I believe it, 100% when they tell me that they've had those experiences in the chamber, whether it's meeting their guidance or, meeting their loved one that passed, on, for them, it was a real experience. And I've also seen it, interestingly enough, where, a couple of people will come in and one of them's like super hyped up and can't wait because they've seen testimonials or they've seen our documentary, and the other friend is like, yeah, whatever. And it it kind of, it disappoints me, but so often it's the friend that didn't have any expectations that hops out, with this grand story, while the friend that was like really hyped up for it walks out and they're like, "Yeah, I fell asleep," or, it was really good but I didn't have, that experience. It I don't know. I think that it's certainly hard to understand if you haven't had a mind blowing spiritual experience. It is hard to accept anything that sounds so esoteric and supernatural to be true. I get it because I was at that point. I mean, I didn't believe any of it. People like me, I thought I was a kook, right? Complete kook. But when it happens to you, you know, it's real. You can't see Bigfoot, hang out with him at the campfire, and then go back to believing that Bigfoot doesn't exist. So if it happens to you, then it's absolutely real in your reality. And for me, the things that people describe, I've seen enough of it, and I'm absolutely convinced that for almost every person that comes out, I think that what they describe when they describe these amazing experiences, I think they're telling the truth. And I know there's spirit, so you have to at least get that far. If you're still not believing that there's even spirit, then it's really hard to hold a conversation, because you have to at least get to that point where that spirit is just occupying this vessel. And so we have all sorts of unseen friends and unseen dimensions that are um, not in the physical, but they're certainly active around us.
Yeah, and I'm not I'm just giving you a hard time. Like, I'm all about it, right? I just wanted to
I hear
find
you.
out what you'd say, and I like to ask, like, kind of poke at people and see what they'll say, just because most people don't do that. Most people will just be like, so tell me about your chamber. And they're like, "Oh, that's
Right.
great," right? But I'm all about it, man. I always say this. I'm going to make a t-shirt, I swear to God. I always say this, regardless of whether or not it's real, it's a real experience,
Right. That's exactly
right?
right. Absolutely.
And as long as it's helping people, as long as someone leaves feeling better, why does it matter if
That's
it's real
exactly
or
right.
not?
And again, as the skeptic, that stands back and looks at this and has been, working with this technology for the last 4+ years, I I have to say that I'm wanting to test it, in that sense that as a skeptic, I'm looking at it, and when people, report that their tests for their organs that were out of, completely out of whack, and would never get, back to these normal ranges, and they've come in, they've used the energy equipment, and they've, set their intent, and they've prayed, and they've, and then they get these reports back that all their numbers are correct. You're like, okay, and as the skeptic, it may not be God, it may not be any of the technology, it may just be the placebo effect, right? I mean, it could be the sugar pill effect, because
Right?
the Ascension Chamber offers an awful lot of opportunity for somebody to put their hope in, and we already know that when people are participating in clinical trials, oftentimes uh, they've gone in there with the hope of using a wonder drug, and they get the sugar pill, and yet they get better. And so science, can only explain that as the placebo effect, or, we could say it's mind over matter. People needed something to believe in. But unfortunately, when you're talking about clinical trials, individuals that are suffering often, don't have the ability to, pick up and move across country to be at UCLA for, a 12-week trial. And so they don't ever get the chance to be in a position to allow the quote placebo effect to work for them, because we know that a lot of people get better just because they had something to believe in. So what I like about the Ascension Chamber is that, yes, it does have some very intriguing technology that all has a history of allegedly bringing people into balance, and curing all sorts of different conditions. Well, you combine that with the spiritual side, and you combine that, we're altering the brain waves, or at least attempting to put people in a very deep, relaxed place, where they're potentially more likely to have a deep meditative or spiritual type experience. And they just got done, you know, inviting in all of their angelic help to support them in it. So maybe it's the angels. I don't know. Maybe it's all of the different frequencies in the information field that's built that actually does the work. Or it's a combination of all of them. I don't know. But I can tell you that we've had some individuals that have had some terribly debilitating conditions get back to us and describe complete and total restoration. Now I believe that they healed themselves, but somehow the chamber played a part of their journey of healing.
I can totally buy into that too. Um, like, healing yourself, and regardless of whether or not, all the lights and the crystals and the frequencies, and the plasma, all that stuff, regardless of whether or not it was that or not, all that would matter to me is helping people out. And if people heal themselves with that, then that's perfectly fine. I can attest personally to having, like, energy healing done by myself to myself in, like, a meditation, and then having like the same thing. I don't want to go into too many details, but like the the organ levels. You know what I'm talking about? Like the readings of your blood work for organ levels. Mine went back to almost normal levels after having this weird meditation. It was like the image of like a sponge scrubbing off the particular organ that was affected in my head. It
Yeah,
was just, it was like really weird. I don't know if I'm ready to talk
it's
about it on my show,
theatrical.
but it's
It's
like, yeah, it's weird. Like I went into this weird trance and my wife was there and she starts talking to me and I was just like, I said something weird. Like it was so creepy. It was like, we ask for quiet cooperation for important energy work is taking place. And then I just sat there. It was so freaking
wow.
weird. So
That's so cool.
I could totally buy into the whole like people getting better with their organs because it actually happened to me.
Right, there you
Um,
go.
and so I'm all in, man. I'm all about it.
I love that. And don't you think? I mean, that's an example of the theatrics because our higher self, and our subconscious, when they get together, they produce these kinds of moments where they give you your like in this trance you channel this the important works um, taking place, and then you get this you observe this visual, right, with a sponge cleaning off the organ, and that to me is just theatrical, and that's how spirit works behind the scenes. And so I know it sounds weird, but you have to enjoy those moments and go like, all right, what did they come up with now to entertain me? And that's why every person will have individual experiences. What their spirit guides and their higher self is allowed to bring through. And I love it. That's the beauty of creation, and that's the magic of this third density that we're in. And you just have to embrace those moments.
Yeah, and it puts it in a framework that we can understand. You know what I mean?
Right. Right.
If I was just like, oh man, there's some weird spirit screwing around with my insides, it'd be a little weird. But
It
like
still
this,
sounds weird, yeah.
well,
But
yeah, it does. But
that but like that's how it works, guys. Like it's a busy universe. There's lots of angels, always willing to help out, and they can perform miracles when you're ready to release and heal yourself. I mean, they're there to help.
that's amazing. So let's talk about the actual website, the documentary, all your social medias for the chamber. Where are you located? How can people come and experience this amazing thing that you've built? Well, what do you got going on?
So the website where you can schedule appointments is ascensionchamber.life. And we are in Phoenix, Arizona, about 5 minutes from the airport. So we're very easily accessible if you're in the Phoenix area. And you go on our website and you can book appointments. And we just chartered the Ascension Institute. So we're a nonprofit. Our goal is to share the technology with the world and get it out there. It's not to make a buck off of it. Um, the We've got different packages that you can purchase, to use the chamber, and we've got uh, a YouTube video. If you go and look for Ascension Chamber, our documentary is about an hour long. Um, it got a lot of testimonials. It's got a nice tour of the chamber, so you can really get your head wrapped around what we're doing. And if you just typed in "Labor of Love Ascension Chamber," you'd probably find our documentary. But if you search for Ascension Chamber, we'll pop up and you'll see our channel.
Perfect. And links to all of that stuff and as much research about what me and Chad talked about as I can find will be found in the description. And Chad, I'm going to put you on the spot here and ask, do you have a message that you'd like to leave for my audience?
Well, the we're living in some very, very special times, and I'll tell you, if you're a seeker, keep seeking and take the time that you need for yourself to seek and find that truth, and you're going to find it. And go to the sound healings and go to the local meetups with other like-minded individuals that are open-minded and that are exploring, and never forget that truly we are eternal spirits having this human experience. And I think the Buddha said that enlightenment was the end of suffering. And when you can totally buy into the idea that as a soul we are truly here, having this magnificent experience with the veil dropped in this, avatar, if you will. And when the avatar is, done with its work, the consciousness continues. And when you can actually understand that and buy into it, then what would be the point of suffering if everything is an illusion? And it makes it a lot more easy to understand what the Buddha was talking about when he, referenced that. Because if you can, really believe that you're a soul and this is an illusion and everything is happening to you and it's your opportunity to play the game and demonstrate love, it makes it a lot easier. So keep seeking.
Thank you so much for coming on my show and talking with me about your chamber and letting me poke at you a little bit. And I had a really fun conversation. So thanks for coming on, man.
Hey, I appreciate you very much, my brother. Anytime. And got to get you down here and get you in the chamber, get you a session.
That's it for today's episode. I would like to thank Chad for coming on to the show, and I would also like to thank you for tuning in. Definitely check out the Ascension Chamber. Check out the documentary. Check out everything Chad's got going on. He's a super interesting dude. And I am super stoked to get out there and get in this chamber one of these days whenever I get a chance. And if you get a chance to head out there to go into the chamber yourself, even better. Let me know how it goes. Don't forget to share the podcast with everybody you know in the entire world. It'd be great. If you want to come on to the podcast to talk with me about your past life experience or your knowledge on any metaphysical topic, shoot me an email. My email is theregressionsession@gmail.com, and I would love to have you on the show.
Can you see beyond your mind? Can you shed a light on the treasure that you are? Can you be at ease for a moment? Can you feel that peace and you're zoning? Everything that you are, you already got all you need.
definitely check out the Ascension Chamber. If you get a chance to head out there for a session, that would be even better. Tell them that Ian sent you. That sounds so bad.